Welcome back to Game Talk from the Bench. I'm your host, Drew Bird. I'm taking here my guest, my Uncle Joe. Today, we have a lot of baseball to cover. It's going to be mostly baseball. Before we get into baseball, we're going to talk some NFL. We got a couple of injuries and about four contract extensions that we'll get into. Starting us off with the Bears. They are investing heavily in their offensive line to protect Caleb Williams. They are signing 2023 first-round pick Darnell Wright to a 4-year, $116 million contract extension. It gives him $93 million guaranteed, and it makes him the second highest paid right tackle, only trailing Washington's Laramie Tunsil. And I gotta say, you know, tackles are I think besides either them or the center are the most important position on the offensive line. And you have your guy in Caleb Williams that you need to protect. Darnell Wright has been great for them, especially under Ben Johnson. He earned second team All Pro this past season, and although he had his fifth year option, they did extend him right away, and it's just like I said, it's the right move. You want your quarterback protected. He's the guy that could get it done, and for me, it was a no brainer. Big money. I think he deserves it. I mean, like I said, every year, every position goes up in money. So, like I said, he's not the highest, so he didn't reset the market, but it's really, really deserved money for Darnell Wright.
Yeah, it definitely is. He's the right tackle, right? Not the left?
Yes.
Yes, yeah, I saw that. So he's definitely obviously the highest paid right tackle, which is crazy. But he definitely deserves it. He earned it. I mean, he's been playing great, since his rookie year. I mean, I think he's only missed a couple of games. So, I mean, that's just another good thing, he's dominant, like you said, as a right tackle. I mean, there's nothing more you can ask for as a right tackle where, he protects Caleb Williams, like you said. You have to get him that protection, and they got him. They got it for him. So, there's nothing wrong with that. I think it's a great signing. You didn't pay him more than Larry Tunsil, but, Larry Tunsil. But it's okay. I mean, it doesn't matter. I mean, he got, I think, I want to say $100 million guaranteed or.
Yeah, it's about close. It's 93 million, but it's right there.
Hey, so a young man got paid and he deserved it, and like you said, you got to build that interior to protect Caleb Williams. That's your future, so there's nothing wrong with that. So I agree with that move, and I think it was a great signing for the Bears.
Yeah, and it's all about protecting Caleb Williams. We know he's a guy who likes to run out the pocket, and he's going to take his chances running the ball. So you at least got to protect him while he's in the pocket. And like you said, it's just, it was a no-brainer move. Now, our next contract extension is going to the New Orleans Saints. Chris Olave is signing a 4-year deal worth up to $132 million. It's got $90 million total in guarantees and a $35 million signing bonus. So big money for Chris Olave. And Chris Olave, he's a wonderful receiver coming out of Ohio State, phenomenal receiver. However, though, he's had the concussion issues. He's had many concussion injuries, and it's scary to see. It's scary to see. We've seen Tua Tagovailoa. His concussions have led to sort of, I want to say, the downfall of his career so far, and his career is still young. Now he's obviously in Atlanta, but Chris Olave has been another player he's been dealt with not only just injuries but concussions, and so it's a little bit of a risk if you're New Orleans to give him this big contract. But when he plays, he's great. In this past season, he played 16 games, hit 100 receptions, 1,100 yards, 9 touchdowns. It was his best season of his career. But 2024, he only had a shortened season, 8 games, 32 receptions, only 400 yards and a touchdown. But when he's healthy, he's a great receiver. And for a team like New Orleans Saints, who needs talent, he's their talent on their offense. Tyler Shuck, their quarterback, gonna need the weapons, all the weapons he could get. And if a healthy Chris Olave is exactly what the Saints need.
Yeah, definitely. Especially, as long as he's healthy, like you said. I mean, he's definitely worth the money, healthy. I mean, concussions happen. And like you brought up Tua, and then, as a quarterback, you don't get hit as much as a receiver. So like you said, I mean, if it kind of like not ruined Tua's career, but it kind of affected him, just imagine a wide receiver who gets hit more than definitely a quarterback. So, it's hard to say, like, giving him all this money. They had to pay him. They really did. And, last year, obviously, definitely earned it, with the stats you just said. So he definitely deserves it. It's just that the concussions, it's a big deal to me because, like I said, he's a wide receiver. He's going to go up the middle, and guess who's waiting for him? A safety. So it's hard to say that because, like you said, he's going to get hit.
Yeah, and especially you don't have, a veteran all-time quarterback like a guy like Aaron Rodgers who knows where to place the ball. Tyler Shuck's still young. It's only gonna be his second year. Obviously, he's still learning the game. It is potential for hospital balls, and I know every quarterback throws them. But for a guy like Chris Olave, I mean, like you said, the safety coming down, a linebacker just waiting for him on a slant just to lay him out. I mean, yeah, they have the rules to protect players these days, but things still happen. And unfortunately, he could obviously not wishing any concussions, but he could obviously get another one. Hopefully, he's wearing that guardian cap. Hopefully, that could protect him. I know a lot of players are starting to wear that nowadays. I know safeties are starting to wear it because the game's scary. Your health is your wealth, and so yeah, just hopefully he stays healthy because when he is a great receiver to watch. But staying in the division, we're moving to Atlanta. Atlanta is extending their star running back, arguably the best running back in the league. I think he is. It's Bijan Robinson. He is signing a 3-year contract extension worth up to 75 million. The base value of his deal is 66.75 million. It's giving him a position best 22 and a quarter $1 million a year, which beats Saquon at by about 2 million. He's going to receive 51 million guaranteed, 37 million at the signing, and this is just like I said, it's no brainer. I mean, like I said, he's probably the best running back in the league. He could catch the ball, he could run the ball. Shoot, if I have to pick, I might have to go for him in fantasy football. I mean, that's just how great of a running back he is. And for Atlanta, they're just extending their talent. Drake London, he got his 4-year deal earlier in June. Kyle Pitts got his 3-year deal. Guard Matthew Bergeron earned his 4-year contract. So Atlanta, just their young talent that they've been drafting, they're keeping. Because obviously, they were once in the Super Bowl against the Patriots with Matt Ryan. We all know what happened in that game. And they've fallen off since, but now you have a lot of talent. And with a guy like Bijan, like I said, who's probably the best at his position, I mean, he's just unbelievable. Last season, he led the league with 2,300 scrimmage yards to make first team All Pro, and he finished fourth in Offensive Player of the Year voting. Obviously, that was heavily impacted by Atlanta and the record, but he's forced 87 missed tackles, and he's just a freak of nature.
Yeah, he really is. He definitely is possibly the best running back. I mean, the only argument right now I have with him, that could be with him, would be Jahmyr Gibbs.
Yep, and he's waiting on a contract.
Right.
So
exactly. So that's the only other running back that I could say that's up there with Bijan, and possibly I could say better. Because they're both. You could pick, like you said in fantasy, if you had either choice of one of those two, you could flip a coin and you'd be happy with either one. But yeah, definitely a well-deserved contract. I mean, Atlanta should have paid him. He's worth it, every penny. That guy, like you said, catches the ball in the backfield. He runs the ball, in between the tackles, outside the tackles. I mean, he does everything that a running back should do. And he's just he's a young guy, and why would you want to let him get to that end of that contract, right now? So you re-sign him, you pay him, he deserves to be the top paid running back. And like you said, the only other running back that would top him in pay right now would be Jahmyr Gibbs, which, like you said, who's possibly going to get that, contract soon, hopefully soon. And Detroit would be dumb to not want to re-sign him now, But other than that, I mean, Atlanta, like you said, they signed Kyle Pitts, They brought in Tua just as a backup, So, they're doing things over there in Atlanta. So it's great that they're doing it. I mean, we'll see what they do in the division. I mean, we'll see. I think it's just going to be Atlanta and Tampa Bay competing. But then, you know what? Last year Carolina surprised us in that division. So, I can't lead them out. And then, like you said, we're talking about New Orleans earlier, and New Orleans looking, pretty, decent for that division. Division pretty much open for any team to win. So Atlanta was good to pay Bijan. He deserves it. It's a well-deserved contract for him, and we'll see what happens in that division. But you know what? Congratulations, Bijan. You're well worth it.
yeah, no, that division, I believe it's the NFC East. It's up for grabs.
No,
Anyone can win that division, huh?
it's the
Is it the
South.
South? Oh, okay, the South. My bad. The East is Dallas in them, right? Yeah, yeah. The South. Yeah, that division's up for grabs. I mean, any team could win it. The Saints got hot late in the year. Atlanta was well within the run last season. Like you said, the Panthers did surprise everyone, but they barely made it out. Tampa Bay started the year last season really hot, but yeah, it's really up in the air. Before we talk about Jahmyr Gibbs, I think the Lions were dumb to not get his contract extension before Bijan, because now he sees Bijan's contract and he's gonna be like, well, I want more. It's kind of like a lot of things edge rushers do. I remember Max Crosby signed his big deal. Boom, a couple weeks later, Myles Garrett topped it. And so, you always kind of want to be the team to kind of reset the market at a position because then the other people see it and they want more. So we'll see what Jahmyr Gibbs does. But yes, he is also looking for a huge contract extension. But on our final contract extension, it's moving us to I was going to say the AL, but it's not, the AFC. We're going to the Baltimore Ravens where Zay Flowers is signing a 4-year, $140 million deal. And that's the one thing I don't like about football. No world, I think Zay Flowers is more valuable than Bijan Robinson. It's unfortunate. That's how NFL is. Wide receivers are valued more. All because, running backs are easy to replace. However, a player like Bijan's, I guess, archetype, you could say, how he plays, what he can do, I think he's well more valuable than Zay Flowers. However, it's whatever. Zay Flowers gets himself, like I said, the 4-year, $140 million contract extension, which includes $108 million guaranteed. It takes place for his 2027 fifth-year rookie option. It ties him as fourth highest paid wideout in terms of annual average salary at $35 million with Minnesota's Justin Jefferson. And he's not even close to Justin Jefferson's level, but that's a conversation for another day. Zay Flowers, he's really good. He's been, with Ravens ever since they drafted him in 2023. He had a 2025 set career highs and 86 catches, 1,200 yards. And he's found the end zone 16 times for the Ravens. Whoa. It's only 25. Obviously, he's Lamar's number one option. And I do, I love that they extended him. I just don't think they should have extended him for that money.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, I just the way it works, like you said, NFL is just a completely different game than all the other sports. So, like you said, the highest paid is the quarterback. Some quarterbacks make more money than the receivers and running backs. So, and sometimes, like you said, sometimes some of those quarterbacks don't even deserve it. But it's just the way the NFL works, and it is what it is. And so, like you said, I believe that he deserves more money than Bijan? No, I don't. I don't believe that. I think that he doesn't deserve more money than Bijan. I think he only had one good year. Zay Flowers is a good player. He's not a great player, but he's definitely a good player. He's definitely a good athlete for Lamar Jackson. But they could have done better. They could have traded for AJ Brown. That would have been a good move for the Ravens. It's just that it is what it is. $100 million guaranteed. That's a lot of money for Zay Flowers, and he better earn it because I know he went around in fantasy for us, and I know some people were disappointed when they had him. So it's just like it is what it is. But like you said, I don't agree that he gets more money than Bijan when Bijan does more. But you're right. I mean, it's NFL. They say running backs can be replaced more. But to be honest with you, it's hard to find another Bijan. You're not going to find another Bijan, in my opinion. I mean, those are rare players. Jahmyr Gibbs, a rare player. Christian McCaffrey, which is coming down the road where he's almost done. It's a rare player, and you just don't find those anywhere, And so, like a Zay Flowers, I mean, to be honest with you, you could find another Zay Flowers, in my opinion. But you know what? It is what it is. Like you said, it's the NFL. The receivers they're paid more, so they feel like they're more valuable. But I guess I could say a well-deserved, not a well-deserved, but you know what? You got your contract, Zay Flowers. You better play good. That's all I could say.
Yeah, because whoever drafted him in fantasy football are going to hoping for a higher production than he even had last year. So we'll see how that is. But keeping it in receivers, we're going to one of our first injuries. It's going to the NFC West with the San Francisco 49ers. Ricky Pearsall to undergo knee surgery. He will miss the entire season, which is unfortunate. The 2024 not first round pick. Was he the first round pick in 24? You're the Niner fan. Yeah. Um, We already know he had the story. He got shot in the chest. Missed a little bit of his rookie season. Played all of most of last season. And this year, the he's out. Not even gonna play week one. Won't play at all. The team doctors, actually, they I want to say they pushed back his knee surgery, um, just to see how his knee would do. And now he's out for the season. So maybe Brandon Ayuk wasn't crazy after all. Maybe that's why he didn't rehab with the team. I'm just kidding. I don't know. But yeah, so unfortunate for Pearsall. Niners are expecting a lot out of their first round pick a few seasons ago. And now they won't have him, right? They so in response they signed Debo Samuel, but he's not dealing with injury, but um, who is my Mike Evans is dealing with hamstring injuries. The Niners are already dealing with injuries, and the season hasn't even started. Blame the substation if you want. I don't know. I don't know at this point what's causing all these injuries. Um, but it's just yeah, it's just an unfortunate event. Niners already impacted by injuries before the season even starts.
Yeah, I don't blame the stud station. They could be going too hard in practice. The defense is playing hard, and some guys are playing for certain spots, and it's just offense versus defense, and I mean, it's just it is what it is. For Ricky Pearsall, like you said, he didn't do the rehab. I don't know if it was his choice or the doctors or how it was. Um, Brandon Ayuk, was he right? I don't think he was right. He should have done his rehab, and if it didn't heal right, he could have went to his doctors too. So it's not like he couldn't go to his doctors. But for Ricky Pearsall, he's had a lot of bad luck. A lot of injuries in the NFL. He played, I think, all his games in college with Florida. So it's like it's hard to say, because he did so good in Florida. That's why the Niners drafted him in the first round. And it sucks that this happened, but it's part of the game, and it sucks. And it's just I really wish, because he's such a young guy, he's a good guy. He started his NFL career getting shot. It sucks that happened. So it's like that, because that has nothing to do with the substation. So it's just it is what it is. It's just bad luck, and I believe that's what it is. Bad luck for Ricky Pearsall. I mean, there's nothing I can say. I wish him best. He's definitely gonna be out for the year. Um, we'll see what happens with like you said, with the Niners doctors, and see what happens. But hopefully, it comes back next year strong. Like you said, they signed Debo. They're, like you said, Mike Evans. I think his hamstring. Like you said, it was his hamstring. So we'll see. There is some other players already that are hurt on the Niners squad, but you know what? There's other players on their teams that are getting hurt too. It's just that for us, it sucks. It's just the guys that we really need the most. Some possibly starters. So for us, it is a big deal. And like you said, we just got Mike Evans, and now he's already hurt. So we'll see what happens. The Niners, not looking good right now, but you know what? We'll see what happens. The preseason game, first game.
Yeah, and that preseason game is coming up. It is next week, I believe, against the Titans. But yeah, that's one thing I have seen before. It's like maybe their practices are too hard, on the players' bodies, and they might be getting pushed too hard. And that could be causing all the injuries. But we don't have an answer. We might not get an answer for what is causing all of these 49er injuries. So we will never know. But moving on to our last injury before we get to the MLB and its trade deadline. It's the Falcons. Linebacker Jalen Walker feared to have torn his ACL in training camp practice. The 2025 first round pick, the number 15th overall pick in 2025. His season might be done, and it's unfortunate. He's one of the two edge rushers selected by Atlanta in the first round, with his teammate James Pierce Jr. Um, Walker, they were expecting a big year from him in year two. Having him and Pierce Jr. on the edges, they were hoping, that they would be the centerpieces of their defense. And now Walker could potentially be out. We just talked about Atlanta signing Bijan. That's one side of the ball, but your defense is just as, if not more important than your offense. And so losing a player of this caliber, like I said, who, they were hoping to be the difference maker this year, and they're not going to have him. It's really unfortunate news for the Falcons.
Yeah, I mean, he didn't put up big stats last year, but like you said, coming out of Georgia, they're always thinking, he's going to produce, and he did produce. I'm not saying he didn't. He was a young talent. Like you say, came out. He got drafted in 2025, so he's very young. And like you said, they were expecting big things out of him this year. And they even signed some good backups. They signed Ecobon and a couple other guys that I can't think of right now off the top of my head. But I know they signed him and a couple other pass rushers just to back him up, to keep him, fresh. And it's just sad to see that happen. I'm pretty sure he's done for the year already. They weren't sure, but he got carted off, and all the players were kneeling. So obviously it was really bad, and it's sad because I think he's 25. So I'm not sure how old he is, but I think he's 25. So it sucks, for 25 years to go down already on his ACL. It was, they were looking for big things for him, and he's a great talent. That guy's a great talent. He's a good pass rusher, good athlete. It just it happens. Like I said, there ain't no substation there. So what's going on over there? So it just, it's part of the game. Some guys go more harder, and we don't know what's going on at practice. Like you said, we're not there, and he could be going too hard, or the offensive line could be hitting. Hey, we just don't know. And you take that wrong step, and then it could happen to anybody. Obviously, I mean, he's a big, talented athlete, so it happened to him. And like I said, he got carted off, so it's part of the game, and it just sucks because he's gonna be out for the whole year. Now, I think we don't know yet. It hasn't came out yet that he tore his ACL. That's what they're predicting. They're not sure yet. So it sucks for him. But you know what? I mean, Atlanta did sign. I believe, if I remember correctly, 3 other talented guys that have played in the NFL. So we'll see. They're going to step up. They're going to step up, and we'll see what Atlanta does, like you said, because it takes both sides of the ball, even your special teams. It's a big deal in the NFL.
Yeah, no, most definitely. So unfortunate news from Atlanta, but like you said, injuries are part of the games. They happen to anyone. One, like you said, wrong step. One, someone else is getting tackled. They run into your leg. A lot of things could factor into these knee injuries. But yeah, it's just unfortunate news for Jalen Walker. But that is all for our NFL news. Moving us on to MLB, where we will talk about not all of them. Okay, a lot of trades went down. We're going to talk about some of the biggest trades that went down, plus some news. And actually, matter of fact, we'll actually start with some of the news first. Yankees, they called up one of the top prospects, George Lombard Jr., 21-year-old infielder, started actually today. He was playing phenomenal defense and hit a home run in his first at-bat. They optioned Anthony Volpe, who used to be their number one prospect back in 2023. So Yankees called him up in hopes that he could be their shortstop of the future. And I actually think that was actually all of the news that I actually kind of wanted to talk about. But moving us to the deadline, I made a post about it, but in case you missed that, the Dodgers acquired Tarik Skubal from the Tigers. We talked about it last week. You said yourself, if the Tigers don't feel like they could extend him, they should at least get with what they can, or what they could. And that's what they did. So they traded Skubal to the Dodgers in exchange for outfielder Zaire Hope, which was LA's number 5th prospect, River Ryan, and right-handed pitcher Brady Smith. So Zaire Hope is a huge prospect from LA, and obviously the Tigers are hoping he becomes something big. Becomes an outfielder next to Max Clark, who I forgot who I wanted to mention. Max Clark made his MLB debut a couple of games ago against the A's. He has looked fantastic. He has hit a home run. And so for Detroit, it's unfortunate. The league, everyone around the league, every other fan base, they didn't like the move, right? Tarik Skubal going to a stacked Dodgers team. Now, granted, other teams could have traded for him. However, it kind of seemed, I think news kind of came out saying how Detroit directly went to LA and said, hey, let's try to make a deal. We want to make a deal with you. Kind of reminded me of the Luka to LA deal, where the Mavericks just said, hey, LA, let's make a deal. Something could be going on behind the curtains. We don't know. But yeah, it's a big deal. He made his debut. He actually is making his debut today. I actually don't have his stats up right now. But yeah, it's just big trade for the Dodgers as they are looking for the 3-peat.
Yeah, I mean, all I hear is this bad criticism about the Dodgers, how they're doing all this. And like I've said before in the past, every team can do it. Every team, the Dodgers obviously gave up, a nice, good prospects for him. But you know what? Anyone else could have done it. You have your prospects. Everyone has their prospects. If you're at that point where, you need that pitcher, you make that move. And I'm pretty sure a couple of Dodgers pitchers are hurt right now, and that's why they made that move, which is a great move by Dodgers. I hate the Dodgers, and I'll say it again. I hate the Dodgers. But you know what? I don't hate on what they're doing. You know, every team can do it, and not every team can do it because some are in smaller markets, and I understand that. But you know what? If you win, like the Rays, look at the Rays. They're in a small market, and they're still winning. They're making moves. They made some moves too in the trade deadline, and I'm sure you're going to get to those. But it's just like, you know what? I don't like that. People say it's a small market because if you're winning in a small market, you're going to make moves and you're going to try to win. And look at the Rays. They're in first place in the AL East ahead of the Yankees. And the Yankees made some moves because they're behind the Rays. So you know what? I cannot hate on the Dodgers for what they're doing. And like you said, they're going for that three-peat. And you know what? All I can say is good luck. I mean, and they probably don't even need my luck. So, it is what it is. It's part of the game. And you know what? Every team can do it. Every team can make those trades, make those moves. It's just a matter of doing it. You want to win, you're going to make those moves. If you don't, then you possibly might not win. It was a great move for the Dodgers. I can't say enough about the Dodgers. And like I said, I'll say it one more time. I hate the Dodgers. But you know what? You got to give credit when credit's due, and they deserved it.
Yeah, like you said, Dodgers are a big market. Some small market teams don't have the capacity, but the Dodgers also have a huge TV deal. They have a 25-year, $8.35 billion local television agreement with Sportsnet LA. So they get a lot of money there. And when their owner went bankrupt, I want to say in 2011, 2012, the MLB helped them out, and they got extra money, and so they get a lot of money every year from the TV deal, kind of, and that's able to help them get big stars. It's helped them get guys like Kyle Tucker, Shohei Ohtani, a lot of players. But like I said, in this one, any team could have traded for him. And for the Dodgers, people got to remember, he's just a rental, right? They haven't extended him. We don't know if he's willing to sign back with LA. Obviously, if he wins, good chances. But it's only a rental, so they're giving up they gave up those three prospects for about 2 months of Tarik Skubal, and so we'll see if it pays out. But he's human. Tonight he played against the Cubs, went 6 innings, gave up 2 earned runs. They are currently down 5-1. And they're actually about to lose their sixth straight game. So the Dodgers, who everyone calls, unbeatable, the powerhouse of the Avengers, which they still kind of are, they're still human, right? And I think, although they might have the best pitching lineup and the hitting lineup, they're human at the end of the day. They're beatable. But yeah, just a huge trade for LA. They also acquired Chris Bubik. I don't know how you want to pronounce his last name. A left-handed pitcher from Kansas City. Don't know what they gave up. That was just kind of a smaller trade. He was an all-star last year. Numbers are much down this year. He's got a 4.5 ERA, but they acquired him. They technically have two starting rotations. They have like 10 caliber starting pitchers. But yeah, so Dodgers, they just continue to make moves. But the Red Sox, who have been red hot and actually swept the Dodgers this past weekend, which probably forced their hand to trade for Skubal. Red Sox, they traded for catcher Adley Rutschman and Jake Rogers and cash in exchange for right-handed pitcher prospect Anthony Ianson, right-handed pitcher Kyan Witherspoon, outfielder N.D. Azokar, and catcher Carlos Navarez. Adley Rutschman, who had a down year last year, is much better this year, was an all-star once again. And for the Red Sox, who needed catching help because the catchers on their roster had only 4 home runs combined. Granted, Rutschman only has 8. It's still more. His production is much more. Plus, with Samuel Basallo being on the Orioles, they were looking to move him anyways. The young, Sam was the left-handed first baseman / catcher. Will probably be the catcher now. And Rutschman is on his way to Boston. It's a big deal. Like I said, they went on a 15-game winning streak. Like I said, they just swept the Dodgers. They're hot, and they want to get into October, and they want to make some noise.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be hard for them to do that. They can make it, uh, but it's going to be hard, with the Rays and the Yankees ahead of them. But that was a great move for them, and I believe they got two catchers in that trade, right?
Yes, they also got Jake Rogers.
Yeah, so I mean, they got two catchers in that trade, and like you said, that's where they needed, help the most, and that was just like you said, a smart move. That's what you do. Especially when you're on a 15-game winning streak. You just swept the Dodgers, and like you just said, some people call the Dodgers the Avengers. Well, the Avengers lost before, so I mean, they can lose, like you said, and Boston just proved it. Like you said, you can outperform the Dodgers. You probably got to play your best baseball, but you know what? That's what you should be doing every night. So you know what? That was a great move by the Red Sox, picking up those catchers. I mean, just because, like I said, if that's their weakest position, why wouldn't you make those moves and do that? It's a smart baseball move. I think they got rid of some good prospects for it. But you know what? You don't know what your prospects are going to be, but that was definitely a great move for the Red Sox. I like that move, and it's just a good baseball move.
Yeah, they did give up a large sum of prospect. They gave up the number two prospect, the number four, and the number five. But like you
Yeah.
said, prospects, we don't know what they're gonna be in. AJ Preller, the GM of the Padres, he's all about getting rid of his prospects, right? Because you don't know what they're gonna turn into. But now, granted, Preller has traded away some incredible prospects. James Wood, who's phenomenal on the Nationals. CJ Abrams, phenomenal for the Nationals. A lot of prospects AJ Preller's given up. They're great, but you never know what they might turn into. They might just be nobodies for all we know. But when you're trying to win now, potentially with the lockout next year, this season could be really big. But moving to Philly, they made a move with the Giants. They acquired second baseman Luis Arraez and right-handed pitcher reliever Caleb Killian. In exchange, the Giants get prospect Ramon Marquez and right-handed pitcher Marty Geyer. For Philly, big move. They needed contact. They needed guys to get on base. He is playing second base as well, so it moved around the infield. Bryson Stott, who I believe is their second baseman, is going to first. And it's moving Bryce Harper back into the outfield and right field. Now, we all know Harper used to play in the outfield, had his elbow injury, and moved to first base. Now he said he was willing to move back out. Rises there, had himself a great day. I know he already had 3 RBIs in their game today against the Nationals, so already making an impact. But yeah, this is a big move for Philly as they're looking to get into the playoffs and be the team to upset the Dodgers. And I think for them it's great. I think for the Giants it's great too. You signed a rise to help when you do. You obviously would have loved to keep him. However, though he's a rental, and in exchange you got Philly's number four prospect, who has a 1.68 ERA across two levels this season, and Marty Geyer, who's also a hard throwing right-handed pitcher. So I think for the Giants, it's great. You get some prospects back. You're rebuilding the team that obviously, isn't able to compete right now.
Yeah, it was definitely a good move for the Giants. He would just you signed him a 1 year, I think 13 million. So, you had to get rid of him. He was playing great baseball. I mean, I think he has the best batting average in the league right now. I could be wrong.
Yes, I believe you're correct. In the
Yeah,
National League, at least.
at least yeah. So I mean, he's batting phenomenal right now. And like you said, the Phillies need guys to get on base, and that guy gets on base. He gets on base. He gets hits. They have a lot of people say, well, he doesn't hit a lot of home runs. Well, you don't need to hit a lot of home runs if you go 3 for 4 every night, and just get three singles or three doubles or a single and a double, and he gets on base a lot. And I heard about him before the Giants signed him, and I looked up his stats, and I'm like, oh, okay, he's pretty good. And then watching him, now, every day, and I'm just like, man, this guy does play good baseball. He gets on base, And the thing is, Giants couldn't really do anything. So it was a great move for the Giants. I'm trying to think if it's him or another guy that they got was like a top 10 Major League Baseball prospect. And I don't know if it was Morales. Was it Morales? Is that what you said? Morales?
No, they Marquez is who they got.
Mark.
That was Phillies number
Yeah.
four. They might have gotten. I think they got other prospects from another trade that they made that we'll probably get to. But yeah, especially for him, he doesn't need to hit home run in Philly. Bryce Harper's on the squad. Kyle Schwarber's on the squad. Trey Turner's on the squad. They have home run hitting guys. So I think it's a great pick for Philly, right? Get him on base, or even if they're runners in scoring position, like today, he was their cleanup spot. He was batting fourth. Guys were on base, and he's hitting them in. I mean, it's what you want, and so it's a big move for Philly. Speaking of the Padres, they actually made a pretty big move at the end of the deadline. They acquired right-handed pitcher Casey Mize and infielder Gage Workman from the Detroit Tigers in exchange for, I believe they're one of the top prospects, Cash Mayfield and Jackson Wolf. Padres, who are in the hunt of the wild card, are desperately lacking pitchers. With their injuries to Joe Musgrove and Nick Pavetta, who both made rehab starts today and are trending in the right direction, they've been pitching out. They've been out there going with Walker Buehler, Randy Vasquez, Herman Marquez, J.P. Sears, Griffin Canning. Those five are horrendous. So they go out and they got Casey Mize, who's got a 2.7 ERA on the season, was great with Detroit last year. Obviously, they went to the playoffs. He was great there. Has been great so far this season. And the Padres, they actually also acquired Robbie Ray from the Giants in exchange for right-handed pitcher Miguel Mendez and shortstop Joniel Hernandez. So Padres get two quality starters in their hunt for the playoffs. Because, like I said, you kind of got to go all in or all out. We don't know what's going to happen with baseball next year, right? This could be the potential lockout. We don't know. So, AJ Preller, the madman, some people call him, went out and get themselves two quality pitchers to help San Diego get into October. And if they do, it's a solid rotation that they've got.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, your five stars right now that you guys have as a Padres fan, I know you are. They're pitching horrendous. So what do? You say, what, let's go get starting pitching. And Robbie Ray's been the best pitcher in the month of July, and I think if I'm correct, he has a .091 ERA in July. So he's pitching lights out. The Detroit pitcher, I don't know too much about him. But you know what? If your starting pitcher is not doing good, you go out there and get another starter, and that's what the San Diego did, and that's what great GMs do. You go for your weakness, and like you said, your five starters you're pitching horrendous. So what do? You go get those starting pitchers, and that was just phenomenal moves by the Padres GM. Why wouldn't you do that? You got the bats, so obviously you need the pitching, and Robbie Ray, like I said, he's pitching lights out. I've been watching him, like I said, I've watched him this past month, and like I said, I mean, yeah, he does walk a lot, which is not good. But like I said, his ERA has been phenomenal. He'll probably get pitcher of the month or whatever they give out for the month, National League Player of the Month, because he's been pitching lights out for the month of July when it just ended. And the Padres got a great player in Robbie Ray. I mean, he was on his last year, if not another year left.
Yeah, both pitchers are going to be entering free agency.
Yeah.
However, with the new ownership of the Padres, I probably won't extend Robbie Ray because he is going to be 35. However, Casey Mize is only 29, if I'm not mistaken, and he's a former first overall pick. So it was a big get for them there. But yeah, like you said, they needed starting pitching, and they went out and got it. And so that's they're in the hunt. Their bats have come alive as of recent. They have one of the best bullpens in baseball. All they need is some starting rotation. And unfortunately, they weren't unable to get a bat at the deadline, but they got some need. And AJ Preller did with what he could. Another team that did a lot. The Cubs. They went out and got some starting pitching as well. They traded for Kevin Gausman. They got Kevin Gausman and they got Clay Holmes from the Mets. In exchange, the Blue Jays got Brett Bateman and infielder Tyler Saudenstein. And the Mets got infielder Jefferson Rojas for Clay Holmes and outfielder Tyrone Taylor. So the Cubs are a team who also lacked starting pitching. They went out, got two quality starters, and they're looking to make some noise in the playoffs. Their team right now that they're beating the Dodgers. They beat them last night. They're beating them today. They're on potential sweep watch for the Dodgers. So another team that could potentially, upset the Dodgers. We all know Pete Crow Armstrong is, the star out there in center field, and like I said, a lot of trades went down. So it's we're trying to get through them all, but yeah, Cubs are another team that they just addressed. They got what they needed, and they're like I said, they're every team's trying to make it to October and make some noise, but the Cubs are hoping that their starting rotation just got a whole lot better.
Yeah, and I believe it did. The Cubs, like you said, they've been playing phenomenal baseball, and when you're playing phenomenal baseball and you're not pitching as well and the trade deadline's coming up, you make those moves. And you know what? The GM made the moves, and that's just smart baseball. Yeah, you got to give up some prospects, but we discussed this earlier. We don't know what those prospects are going to be. They could be nothing. They could be great. They could be good. We don't know. And you know what? Sometimes you got to it's a risk for reward, you know what I mean? And you know what? I like that risk, Kevin Gausman is a great solid pitcher. He's definitely going to help out the Cubs. He's I seen him, on Toronto and then with the Giants. He's good. He's a good quality pitcher, and he can hit close to 100, if not 100. And he's a great starting pitcher. And the Cubs GM was just smart. We're hitting good. We're playing great baseball, like you said. I don't know if they swept the Dodgers, but I'm pretty sure they won the series against the Dodgers recently. So you know what? Like we just discussed, the Dodgers can be beat. So you know what? It was a great move for the Cubs to get these starting pitchers because you know what? If that's your weakness right now and you're playing great baseball, why not make those moves?
And I almost forgot, they also got Jose Soriano from the Angels. And Soriano, who the 27-year-old from the Angels, was red hot to start the season. However, he still has only had a 3.29 ERA in 22 starts. Did have to give up quite a lot for him, though. They gave up their number 43, the MLB pipeline's number 43 prospect, 20-year-old shortstop. But, like you said, you got to give up prospects. To get players, you have to give up prospects. So, um, oh, I'm talking about the Blue Jays. We were just talking about the Cubs, huh?
Yeah, the
That
Cubs.
is That I mean, Cubs, yes, they get those two quality pitchers, but not the Rays, the Blue Jays, they got Jose Soriano from the Angels. They want to, they traded out, I guess you could say, Gosman for Soriano. Soriano is younger, and I still believe he's got years of control. If they pair him with Dylan Cease, the All Star, so Toronto obviously not the same team that they were last year, right? Who took the Dodgers to Game 7 in the World Series. They are most likely not making the playoffs. But sometimes, you got to build for the future, and they obviously knew they dealt Gosman, they got some players back, and, then they acquired Soriano. So, sometimes you got to take, one step back to go, a couple more steps forward. And, we talked a lot about the Rays. They made some moves. They acquired Freddie Peralta from the Mets for outfielder Aiden Smith, Gary Hill, and Emilian Petrie. They also acquired Liam Hicks from the Marlins for infielder Braden Taylor, shortstop Adrian Santana, and right-handed pitcher Jacob Kisting. So the Rays, who are, leading the division, they go out and they're looking to make their team better. And that's great to see. We talked about they're a small market team. They, 2020, they were in the World Series, had a great team with guys like Blake Snell, Tyler Glass. Now that team is fully gone now. And now they're looking, like I said, they're leading the Yankees in the AL East, and now they're adding to their team. They're looking to potentially win it all. I mean, they're a sneaky team. You don't hear a lot about the Rays, and I think that's a good thing. You want to be the underdogs come October because that just puts more fire in your heart to play. And for them to acquire a great switch hitting first baseman slash catcher in Liam Hicks and Freddie Peralta, who has struggled this year really bad with the Mets, but hopefully Tampa Bay could turn him around and be the pitcher that he was in Milwaukee. So I think it's great for the Rays. Like I said, they're trying to go back to the World Series like they once were.
Yeah, it was definitely a great move for the Rays making these moves. Like you said, the Yankees are going to make these moves. These Red Sox are going to make the moves, and they're behind you. So you got to make the moves too. And it was just the smart moves for the Rays. Like you said, small market team, but like I said, in 2020 they were in the World Series, so you know what, they can make it back. Why? Making the moves. And like I said, you give up prospects. We already discussed this. You got to give up. You got to give up prospects to get something back in return. But you know what? We're trying to win now. So nothing wrong with trying to win now. And I like the Rays. And like you said, a lot of people are going to root for the underdog as well. Not just people in Tampa Bay, but outside of Tampa Bay. And since the Giants, like I'm saying, they're not going to make the World Series. They're not going to make the playoffs. So that being said, I'll probably root for the Rays. Because I like the small market underdog team, and you know what? I think that's great. Like you said, and not just me, but other people do it, and it's just a smart move by the Rays to pick up these guys because it's definitely helping them out. Because also by picking them up, the Yankees didn't get to pick them up. The Red Sox didn't get to pick them up. You got to think about your division and in your AL and the AL, the American League. So, it was smart for them to make these moves. I thought it was a great move. I can't say anything more about the Rays because, like I said, they're playing phenomenal baseball right now. I did not expect them to be in first place right now. I've always said this year, especially being on the show with you this year, that the Yankees were going to win that division, and from what it looks like they're not going to win it.
Yeah, and the Yankees, who we'll talk about next in their trades, they were looking at a lot of top players. They're looking at Mason Miller from the Padres. They're looking at Adrian Morejon from the Padres. They were looking at a lot of big name guys. And now, yes, they did get quite a few. They acquired Luis Garcia Jr. From the Nationals in exchange for uh, four players. Right-handed pitcher Giovanni Cruz, Jake Bird, right-handed pitcher Jake Serbert, right-handed pitcher Ben Gramble. I mean, they gave up a lot for him. He's only 26-year-old. He hit a home run in his debut game, but they also acquired outfielder Elliot Ramos from the Giants, and in exchange for left-handed pitcher Henry Lane and shortstop Caden Kent, who is the son of Jeff Kent, former Giant. Um, so they go out and they get themselves two bats. Were a first baseman that they wanted to do. Maybe they could put Austin Wells at full time, not Austin Wells, Ben Rice at full time DH or potentially behind the plate more. And Elliot Ramos, with the injuries to Giancarlo Stanton, Judge, and Bellinger, they needed some outfielder help. Now, granted, he's not the best outfielder. He is going to be in left field. However, he could still hit some. He is a swing and miss type of guy, but he's got power to his bat and he's got some music control. So, as for the Giants, they're just building their farm. Lane was New York's number fifth prospect, and Kent was their number 13th. So, Giants rebuilding their farm, and the Yankees are once again trying to go for it all.
Yeah, I mean that was a smart move for the Yankees, I believe, to get Helio Ramos. Because he's been playing good baseball with us. Not great baseball, but he's been playing good baseball. And like you said, he's a hit or miss guy. He's got that pop though. And you know what? Playing every day in Yankee Stadium, like I've always said before, and I've said in the past in the show, it's a Little League World Series stadium. So in my opinion, he could hit a lot of home runs there. And like you said, with Stan down and Judge down, you need that bat, and he could be that bat. I don't, we'll see. I know he has the potential to do it. It's just a matter of him doing it. We'll see. He might be a bust. But he, like I said, you have control of him for the next, I believe, 3 or 4 years. So
Yeah.
they have control of him, and that was the only bad thing I didn't like. The Giants getting rid of him because they had that control over him, and now the Yankees do. So, but we did get that starting pitcher.
Henry Lane, the big 6'4", 6'4", I think, left-handed pitcher.
Okay, I thought he was 6'7".
He might be 6. I think you might be. I was gonna say he's either 6'4" or he's 6'7".
Well, I read something about him being 6'7". I'm like, oh man, if he's 6'7" on the mound, he's almost 7 foot. So, you know what? That's a great move for them. He's definitely a good prospect. Like I said, top 5 for the Yankees. And then Jeff Kent's son. I mean, we'll see what he does. Like you said, the Giants got rid of some players because they needed to build up that farm system. They weren't going nowhere. You might as well get rid of these players. That was the only player I did not like getting rid of because you had to control them the next 3 or 4 years. But you know what? I believe they got something good in return. So you know what? It's definitely worth the move if you're going to get something good in return.
Yeah, like you said, the Giants were even looking to move Devers potentially. They obviously wanted to move Matt Chapman, Willie Adames, I believe Webb and Jung-Hoo Lee, were the only two untouchables in the Giants organization. And I think they, possibly could have moved on from Webb. I think he could have netted you a lot, but they kept on to him. And Jung-Hoo Lee, I think it was great for them to keep him. He's been phenomenal this year. He had 2 home runs last night against the Rangers. He's got about above 300 batting average. He's playing like Luis Suarez himself with more pop. But yeah, and then the Giants made another trade. They traded their quote unquote one of their closers, Eric Miller, to the Red Sox in exchange for Marcelo Meyer.
That's who it is.
Yeah,
Meyer. He's a number like 8 prospect in the all Major League Baseball or something like that.
Yeah, he was a big prospect for Boston. He's been playing in the big leagues as of the past 2 seasons. However, he has struggled a little, but it's just he's a player that he's got a lot of upside, and the Giants are gonna try to get that potential out of him. Like I said, he was a top prospect before. They're hoping they get that player back. And Eric Miller, he kind of was the hometown kid, went to Stanford. Then he was playing for the Giants. Now he's going to Boston, so a little bit of a heartbreaker there. But yeah, like I said, they get Marcelo Meyer, and I think that's it's a pretty good trade. It's a little bit of a risk, right? You're taking a risk on a young kid, but the Giants got nothing to lose.
No, they don't. I mean, I thought that was their best move. I thought, like you said, I know he's been the bigs for a couple of years, but formerly the top 5 prospect in the bigs, that says something right there already. To be the top 5 prospect in the bigs is, not just on the team, but in the Major League Baseball, says a lot. So, like you said, there's potential, and you know what? He could be a bust. We don't know. He could, like I said, these prospects, it's hard to say, and that's why, you can't say enough where you say the prospect could be a bust or it could be a great thing, and maybe he needs more in the farm system where he plays more in AAA, and the Giants are right there in Sacramento. So, what, I like the move, and maybe just throw him down there and see what happens. I did hear that they did try to trade Devers, Chapman, and Adames, but with their contracts, nobody wanted them. So,
Yeah,
it is what it is. And I would have traded Jung Ho Lee. I would have traded
Webb.
Webb, but it's just that, Buster wanted to keep a hold of them, and I understand. That's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. It's just that, like you said, you would have got a nice haul for Webb, and if you package Webb and Jung Ho Lee together, oh my goodness, you would have got a lot.
And it would have been nice to see Webb in some October baseball. We all obviously know his performances when they against the Dodgers in 2021. He was phenomenal pitching in the playoffs. Fortunately, like I say, he's still with the Giants, but yeah, they could net a lot. But yeah, the Giants have retooled their team fully, and they got their farm system is great, right? Their first overall pick, Jackson Flores, he's the big right hard throwing right-handed pitcher from Santa Barbara. He was the 4th overall pick. They just have a great farm now. They're gonna have a lot of their young players can get the opportunity to play, and I think it's gonna be really beneficial for them. And so we'll see how that ends up. But getting into our final trade that we'll talk about, many more trades happen. Yeah, you can look them all up. I'm just trying to cover all the biggest ones. But the final trade we'll talk about is with the Brewers. Now the Brewers were in contention for Tarik Skubal. However, they weren't willing to give up some of the top prospects. And so a lot of fans actually were mad at them for not going after and getting Skubal and pairing him with Mizrowski, which would have been probably the best 1-2 duo pitcher in the league. However, they didn't get him, and instead they go out and make a trade with the Cardinals. They acquire right-handed pitcher Dustin May and relief pitcher, left-handed pitcher Jojo Romero in exchange for outfielder Alexander Frias and outfielder Carlos Ragsdale. May has he's over 100 innings with a 4.38 ERA, and Romero joins Aaron Ashby and DL Hall as the lefties in Milwaukee's bullpen. So 2 solid pitchers going to Milwaukee. We obviously know Milwaukee's pitching factory coaches. I don't know which one I call them, but their pitching is really good in Milwaukee. We've obviously seen what they turned Kyle Harrison into. We've obviously seen what Mizrowski could do now. That just might be what his talent on his own, but we know Milwaukee's got a great pitching staff, and so hopefully they'll make Dustin May the hard throwing right-hander that he once was in LA, and obviously Jojo Romero has always been a solid relief pitcher.
Yeah, it was a great move for the Brewers, and as a baseball fan, I would say that was probably the smarter move than going after Skubal. Is it Skubal?
Skubal, yeah.
Oh yeah. Yeah, it probably would have been the best 1-2 punch, but then, like you said, you're depleting your farm system, and is it worth it? I mean, I think he's only he's just got this year left, so we don't know, what he was signed for the Brewers, and depending on what they do in the playoffs. So I think that was a great move for the Brewers. You know what? Just picking up those pitchers was just it was a phenomenal move. Like you said, they're pitching great out. They had Kyle Harrison. They turned him around. I mean, he was doing good in the Giants, and then the Giants got rid of him and got rid of to get Devers. And was it a great move? Well, we'll see. I don't think it was. But then look at Boston, just kind of got rid of him. And Boston had him, and they had him under their wing, and they let him go, and they traded him away to Milwaukee. And so you know what, it just depends on the system sometimes. And you know what, like you said, Milwaukee out there's got good pitching system out there. So I think it was a great move, because you didn't really give up as much as you would have if you would have got Skubal. So I thought it was a great move for Milwaukee, and we'll see what they do with them.
Yeah, so it was an absolutely crazy deadline. A lot of moves being made, a lot of big names being made, and that's why I love MLB. You're never gonna see a deadline, you're never gonna see an off season as crazy or an All Star game as just as great as MLB is. So if there is a lockout next season, it's gonna be really sad because baseball is such a fun sport to watch. It's even better in person. But yeah, so deadline was really crazy this year. A lot of teams making moves, a lot of unexpected teams making moves. Like I said, a lot of big names being moved around. So we'll see how the rest of the season goes. Should be a good one. A lot of, like I said, a lot of talent going elsewhere and trying to push those teams into October. So we'll see how it all goes down. But that is all for today. No Formula One. Like I said, no basketball we're talking about. I don't follow hockey, so we'll see about that. No soccer as of recent. That I haven't been paying attention to. But thank you all for tuning in. I'd like to thank my guest, my Uncle Joe, for joining me today. Don't forget episodes every Wednesday on YouTube and Spotify. I get posted out on Instagram and TikTok. And until next time, stay ready.